Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tune Project. Today I'm going to be showing you how to put new strings on your violin. This is something that is tricky, and especially now that everybody's in isolation, a lot of violin shops and music shops are closed. So, if you're not familiar with putting strings on your instrument already, this can throw a huge wrench in things. And so I thought I would make this video for those of you who don't already know or aren't comfortable yet changing strings. Hopefully this will help you out. So I just got these new strings. This is not, a promotion for this particular brand. I love Ava Perazzi, not sponsored, but this is just the string that I tend to go back to time and time again, just because it works really well with my instrument and for my particular preferences. So I've got this violin here. I need to take these current strings off. So since I already have strings that I have to remove, I thought I might as well walk you guys through how to do it as I go. So we're starting with the G string, and what you want to never do, first of all, and I've made the mistake of this before and I feel foolish saying it, but you never want to remove all of your strings at the same time, because what happens is, as you can probably guess, your bridge is going to collapse, and then, it's just a mess. If you start to put strings on without a bridge, there's no support, and we just don't want to do that. We don't want to go through that. So I'm going to be removing one string at a time, as should you. I personally don't think it matters where you start. I'm just starting with the G string. That's just how I tend to do it. Anyway, here we go. So we're gonna unravel. Gonna set our strings aside. Open up this new pack of strings. Got our G string here. Beautiful. All right, so what you're gonna wanna do is you wanna take the end of the string. Typically, it'll be a longer strand of color, and depending on the brand of string or the type that you have, the color is gonna be different on every one. You wanna take the end of it with the little pointed tip there, and you want to take your peg. It's gonna likely be loosened already, but if not, you wanna loosen it yourself. You're gonna take the end and you're just gonna stick it right through that tiny little peg hole, just enough so that it pokes out the other side. You don't want a bunch of string coming through the other end. We don't want that. So you're gonna take that first little poke through, you're gonna turn it as you push in and away from you. And that is gonna start to wrap the string around. So I like to start by wrapping the string around the right side, or in this case it's the right side, but the opposite side of where you would turn the peg first, just one or two wraps around, because that ensures that it's gonna stay very secure. And that's not something I came up with. I learned that from a previous teacher, and it has proven useful over the years. So if you can manage to get at least one or two strands or loops around the opposite side of the peg hole before you start to push in and start turning everything, then that'll help to stabilize it and ensure that it's not going to come loose as easily, or it'll stay in tune better. Okay, so once you've got a couple of turns in and you can tell that it's starting to securely wrap itself around the peg, then you're gonna take the other end of the string, which typically has a ball that looks something like this. You are going to put it into the tailpiece on the matching hole that we have here for the G string. So we're gonna keep turning, we're gonna keep twisting, and you're gonna also want to make sure that you put a little bit of tension on the string so that it doesn't slip out of the tailpiece hole. So you wanna kind of pull just a little bit to emulate that stress that naturally falls onto the string when it's in place. Another thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that the string falls in the correct little groove in the bridge. so that it stays nice and secure. You'll notice there are also grooves up here at the base of the fingerboard, what we call the nut. At this point, the string is on. It's not in tune, but it's on. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and get it close to being in tune, and the way that I do that is just by using, again, my left hand to slowly turn the peg away from me. You can use a tuner to do this. Alright, so that is close enough for G right now, and the reason we're not going to tune it perfectly just yet is because once we take the rest of the strings off and put the new ones on, it'll just naturally affect the tuning of all of the strings. So it's not really worth it to try to spend the time and tune each string perfectly as we go, because it's just gonna go out of tune immediately, pretty much. Next, we're gonna do the D string. So again, just like we did with G, we're gonna slowly loosen this D peg. So if you're not sure where it is, it's the top left one, but also another way to find the peg that correlates with the string is to just simply follow the string and see where it ends up, which peg it falls into. And then again, we're just gonna remove that while the peg's still in the peg box. There's never really a reason to completely take the peg out. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but we want to keep the peg in the peg hole. There's not really a reason to take it completely out, and that just kind of complicates things and makes it more difficult. So we're just gonna remove this string. So that one's off, there's D. And I'm gonna grab my new D string, and we're gonna do the same thing here. So this one has a different color, but same thing, we're gonna stick this one into the D peg hole. So now we're gonna take the opposite end. Once we're in that little groove of the nut, we're gonna take the opposite end of the string, place it into the hole here at the base in the tailpiece. It might take a second to find that perfect fit, and that's totally okay. Actually, this one in particular is a little tricky for me personally because of my pickup that runs right underneath the tailpiece, so this might take just a second. All right, so we are now in the tailpiece. Now, the nice thing about stringing a violin is you don't need any extra tools. All you need is a set of strings in your hands. Everything is lined up nicely here, and we are pushing gently into the peg box. And now we can start to kind of feel that tension, and we can start to hear the pitch of the string. And you want to go very slowly with this, like I mentioned before. So we're again trying to get it close to D, but not perfect, because we do want to give the strings time to adjust. And as we're putting the other strings on, that gives them a little bit of time to settle. Not completely, but you know, it does give them a little bit of time to get used to being stretched in a way that they're not yet used to. All right, so we're gonna leave it there for now. And now we move on to the A string, so halfway done. All right, and now we are again going to just loosen, and I'll probably speed this part up because we don't need to see everything 4 times. All right, so the A string I find a little bit tricky because this is the one that's up the highest, so it's the most difficult to access. At least on my violin. I think the other one is the same. Yeah, I think generally it's pretty much the same across the board, where the A is harder to access because it's right underneath the scroll. So it's a little bit harder to see. You want to make sure you're well lit, and you want to make sure that, you know, you're giving yourself plenty of room to work with. So we're gonna again take the end of the string, stick it through, try to make sure that, yep, it's coming out the other side. Perfect. In this case, what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to start by wrapping it around at least 1 or 2 times on the left side, since the peg that we turn now on for the A string and E string are on the right. So the opposite would be left. It certainly doesn't help that the color of the string here is black up here, so it makes it even more difficult, but I think we're good. And again, you know, it might not be perfect the first time. I wasn't happy with how much the string was coming through the other side, so I'm putting it through again and seeing if we can get a little bit more string coming through, because we don't want any issues when we're tuning. We don't want any unraveling happening here. And now this is the point where we're gonna, after taking about three to four turns, we're gonna take the end, we're gonna stick that through the tailpiece so that it's nice and secure by the little ball end there. We're going to continue to guide the string, place a little bit of tension on it, this time with our left hand, and we're gonna turn with our right hand. Now we are taking our E string, our brand new E string, and ooh, I forgot I got a gold one. Cool. This is where it's gonna be a little bit different for everybody. So the string that I have is a loop end E, and some people have a ball end. It really just depends on your instrument. You may either have one fine tuner or you may have all of them, and that is going to make a difference in the type of strings that you have. That's something that you probably already know. It's obviously something we need to know before purchasing a new string set. So in my case, I have one fine tuner on my violin, and it has a little hook for the string. So that's why I have the loop end E. So we're just gonna loop that through. Yours may be a ball end. Either way, that's totally fine. All right, so now we're gonna do the same thing with the E string, and this one is a little bit tricky just because at this point we have all of our strings in the peg box already, so it might be a little bit tricky to find that spot, but just do your best with it. Another thing is you'll notice that most E strings have a tiny little plastic tube around the string, and what that does is it just protects the bridge, because the E string is very, very thin and can be sharp and actually cut through the bridge, so we don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure that that little yellow tube, or whatever color it is lined up with the bridge so that it protects and kind of keeps a little barrier there for it. Now, another thing we want to keep in mind as we're tuning the E string and as we're putting the E string on and tightening it is that we want to use extreme caution, because the E string is the most sensitive, the most temperamental, because it's the thinnest string of all of them. So we want to be extremely careful when we're tuning, when we're turning the peg away from us. We want to be even more careful than we were with the other strings, because we don't want anything to snap, or we don't want, you know, pressure on the string to happen too quickly. So we want to take our time and be very sensitive with this. And as I'm tightening this, I'm just going to do a quick check to make sure my bridge is not leaning forward and we're good. You might find that after putting a brand new set of strings on, and often this is the case, that your bridge could be leaning forward just because of all of the pressure happening at once. If that's the case, you'll just do a quick little fix to make sure that it's in its proper position, and then you'll continue. So once the E string is on and it's secure, the last step in putting a new set of strings on your violin is to just tune them. If you're not confident in your ear, then I would say definitely use a tuner. That's always a great way to go, just to make sure everything is good. And I think this kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Your strings at first will not stay in tune. Just like when you get a new pair of shoes, you know, you have to break them in. It takes a little bit of time before they get settled. Same thing with strings. The more that you play, the faster they'll settle, but just keep that in mind. You might go to pick up your violin for the next week or two and find that your strings are out of tune. That's perfectly normal. You didn't do anything wrong. They're just adjusting to being on your instrument. Alright guys, well that is it for this video. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed to the Tune Project already, I would love it if you hit that red subscribe button below for more videos just like this one. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy practicing!